The scene opens where three boys, with their two vehicles, got stuck in the traffic jam. One of the boys exclaimed that the traffic was worse than what they said, and the other guy commented that they were going to be late for the entrance ceremony. A moment later, some noise was coming from the back. As they turned their faces back to see what was happening, it could be seen that a man was riding his bike at high speed. The one guy asked what that was, and the other exclaimed that he was in the opposite lane. In the spur of the moment, a batter playing baseball hit the ball so hard that it moved out from the stadium. The ball came between the wheels of the bike, leading to the disbalancing of the bike and making him fall on the road. The batsman who hit the shot was named Ariyama Taisuke. He stated that he was a new member and would show them his power. The bowler wondered how the ball went over the cages. Just after, the biker guy came from behind and said that his ball hit his bike on the road while he was driving. He was mad, with blood covering his face. He further commented that he was not prepared to play baseball early in the morning and exclaimed that it was payback, warning them to watch out. Just after, he started running and, with his full energy, threw the ball to the batsman from behind. While another player was encouraging Ariyama for his batting, suddenly the ball hit the head of the batsman. Someone exclaimed that it was no good as his eyes were turning white and asked everyone to call an ambulance. As the biker guy threw the ball with his full power, he crashed into the wall. After that, he climbed on the wall and stated that even though he was aiming for glasses over there, he managed to miss him from that close. As the bowler wondered that the biker guy had incredible shoulder strength, the biker guy thought that the bowler had probably noticed he was a complete amateur. He told the bowler that was enough for that day and added that he should be more careful. After a while, the biker guy took his bike from there and thought that even though he went there to get some repair money from them, he ended up looking lame. The bowler contemplated that the biker guy was not an ordinary man for sure. The scene changes to Shirataki High School, where someone claimed that the 60-second entrance ceremony had concluded. They asked everyone to go to their assigned classrooms and their teachers. On the ground, one student was talking about a guy who still wasn't there. Another replied that he was probably goofing off somewhere. In the spur of the moment, one of them said that the men and women there were so stupid. The one boy said that they had picked the wrong school to attend, and even if they were the strongest delinquents at that place, they would not get anywhere as strong as them. Later, in Class ID, the man claimed to all the ladies and gentlemen that from that time, he, Masaki Minomo, was the teacher for Class D of the first year. He asked them to begin with the seating and told them to answer when he called out their name. He started taking attendance of the students who were gathered there. While calling out their names, he asked a few questions to some students. After a while, when he called out the name of Takahara Jin, no one answered. He asked if there was Takahara Jin and claimed that if he was not there, then there was no need to answer, and it would be fine if all laughed. One student in the class pondered that honestly, Takahara Jin was an idiot. On the other hand, the teacher claimed that being absent on the entrance day was unacceptable. Suddenly, Takahara Jin came with blood flowing from his face. Someone asked him what happened, and everyone was shocked on seeing him. He told the teacher that he was seat number 16, Takahara Jin, and claimed that on the way to school, he got into an unlucky accident. Unfortunately, he became late and further said that he did not want to leave a bad mark on the first day of his high school life. He asked them to recognize how much it took him to get there. As the teacher told him that he understood, in a spur of the moment, Takahara Jin fell down. Later, the three boys saw his bike, and one of them claimed that he was a student there too. He asked Mitsuru if he wanted to do it, to which he agreed. The next scene then shifted to the nurse's office, where the protagonist was shouting in pain as the girl put some medicine on his injuries. Later, he asked the girl if a woman was not supposed to be more gentle with that. She replied that if he was going to cry about it, then he should not get into injuries on the first day. She further asked him why an idiot like him was lodging in her house and stated that the next 3 years were going to be dark. He claimed that it was a big injury, and putting the merbromin on it made it more stingy. Later, he asked her to stop playing around with that injury. She asked him not to talk like that as he lived in luxury.
Hold on. If you guys are loving this video, make sure to comment, "We are loving it," because that is how I get to know that. Now, getting back to the story.
Later, those three boys went to the nurse's room. On seeing them, the girl asked them why they were there. One of them asked the protagonist to lend him his face for a bit, and he replied positively. As the girl then asked to wait for a second, he further replied to the boy that he would let him do what he wished. The boy claimed that it was some good courage, and he took up the skull from there, claiming to get for that where Takahara Jin was doing something with the arm of the skeleton. On watching that, the boy asked him what the hell he was doing and asked him not to destroy that. He replied that if he asked why, he could attach that to his arm and told him that he was a patient there. On hearing that, the boy slapped him, and the girl called out the name of Jim. After that, Takahara Jin called the boy abusively and stated it really hurt him. He further told him that he had tried to restrain himself from fighting if he got into high school. The boy claimed why Jin was still talking and then punched him on the face. Takahara Jin stated that now he would show him some of his willpower. With his willpower, he pushed the boy, and the sound of cracking glass could be heard. Then the boy fell down from the window. At that very moment, the girl shouted that it was the third floor while his friends were calling out his name from the window. Then, Takahara Jin told the girl that yes, it was the third floor, but he did not even lay a hand on him. The scene changes. All the students were gathered around Mitsuru, and Takahara Jin was asking him if he was still alive. On hearing that, his friend abused him. Then, someone entered and claimed that it would be better if a guy like Mitsuru never woke up. His friend asked that man who he was. The man replied that there was nothing to freak out about and stated that all of them were under him and that fat ass deserved to get injured. The friend of Mitsuru stated that who would have guessed that there was a piece of shit in Shirataki as well, while Takahara told the man that he could feel free to kill each other whom he wanted. But if he was going to create disturbance for others, then he had to drop that out. The bowler from the baseball ground incident was also there, and on seeing Takahara, he claimed his presence. Takahara asked the man to wait, but he did not stop. So, Takahara went towards him, put his hand on his shoulder, and stated that he asked him to stop. The man shouted at him, calling him scum, and asked not to touch his precious shoulders that easily. He also stated that if he ever felt life crushing his path to Kashian, then he should be sorry and asked him to remember his words. After a while, he and his people went back in a van while others were watching. Then Takahara contemplated him high class and suddenly remembered about him. He ran towards them with his bike where the girl asked him where he was going. The bowler in the van started laughing, and the man asked him by calling out his name if what was funny. He told him that Takahara was the guy who gave him the injury. On hearing that, he was filled with anger and jumped from the van by breaking the window, while others were watching and claimed that what the hell was happening. Elsewhere, Takahara ran with his bike and claimed that they could not get away from him. The scene opens up in Shirataki baseball ground, where the bus and bike were parked outside. As Takahara was shouting and told the man that now he saw that he was the one who hit him with the ball that morning. He asked him if he was ready to go, finding it interesting, and told him to come at him. The man called him a short fuse and informed him that high school baseball students are forbidden from fighting. Takahara asked him how they could settle it then, and the man told him to settle it in a baseball game. Someone claimed that it was nice, and they could see the true power of him. The manager asked the bowler what was going on, and he explained about Takahara, mentioning that he was the guy who hit Kiriyama with the ball. The manager contemplated that it was interesting. Later, the girl and those three boys came there and asked if Jin had gone. One of them stated that he was over there. Takahara stood for batting, holding the bat in his hand, contemplating why he had to play baseball. He hadn't held a bat since elementary school and wondered why he didn't use it in the fight. Someone asked him for the helmet, but he replied that he didn't need it and drove his bike with no helmet. Kiriyama told him that the outcome would be decided if he could hit a run, win or lose, and they would settle it with baseball. Takahara got that already and asked them to hurry up. One of the players stated he wanted just one run, but there was no way he could hit Kiriyama's curveball. Another guy claimed that his straight ball was also extremely fast. The girl commented on how it would turn into this. Shortly after, Kiriyama threw the ball, but Takahara couldn't hit it. The person recording the speed commented amusingly that the speed was 140 kilometers, and another player asked someone if they saw that, to which they replied that Takahara swung after the ball was already in the mitt. Later, Takahara pondered that people were talking about him as if he were an idiot, and stated that guys could not hit it to save their life. Again, the pitcher threw the ball, but just like earlier, he couldn't hit it. Then the players started mocking him, asking what was the matter. Someone commented that he couldn't hit a 140 kilometers fastball, and after hearing this, Takahara stated that there was still one ball left and asked them to sit down and watch. He further mentioned that 140 kilometers was nothing, as his record was 250 kilometers. Someone replied that if it was 250 kilometers and if he was on Earth, then Kiriyama called him out as a shitocker. Takahara replied that he was making him look pathetic and needed to put it all on the line. The third time when he bowled, calling out that it would be strike number 3, the speed of the ball was 145 kilometers, and the ball hit Takahara in the face. Everyone watched that scene. He said that it was a dead ball, and that was his win. Later, the catcher commented that even though it hit him, it was in the strike zone, making it 3 strikes. Takahara asked if what the hell was that or if he meant that it was still a strike even though it hit his face, and then he asked him if he wanted to try that, and then he would see him cry. The girl felt so embarrassed on seeing all that, where Kiriyama told Takahara that he did well by taking his fast ball with his face and let that be a dead ball. If he could run a double, then it was his win and a smack on his face. Later, Takahara was picking up the ball, while the man asked him what he was doing. Then Takahara abused him and asked if his whole plan was all along just to try and humiliate him. That could not be helped, he thought. I could not lose with my willpower. He shouted to go and not make fun of him. He took up the rock in his hand, but Kiriyama asked him to back it up. A moment later, a man was riding his scooter and contemplating that Akina Nakamori was so nice to listen to on the bike. Suddenly, he watched the bike, and on seeing that, he ran towards the baseball ground. On seeing that man, the girl called him out, "Dad," and shouted at him that he skipped work to watch the baseball match. His dad replied that it was not what it looked like and asked for Jin. She answered, "Over there," pointing to where he was. He was on the ground, and seeing him, he asked if he was really just playing or if he was honestly an amateur. He stated that it felt like it was going to be good and seemed like fun. She commented it was going to be a problem, but he replied that it was getting him excited and he wanted to watch. Later, he starts bowling, but the ball was out of the strike zone. He again gave him the ball, again out of the strike zone. Everyone was amazed with bowling, where Takahara asked him what the problem was. The girl commented that he had good strength but was not throwing in the strike zone. She later stated that she didn't care about whatever happens, and also she did not know the deal with him being his close friend's son. But he was too much to handle. She also stated that her dad did not even care that there were rumors of his precious daughter and Takahara living together as a couple. While her dad was not listening to her, she shouted at him if he could hear her. Her dad asked her to be quiet and commented that his pitching form was absolutely terrible, but Jin could throw an unbelievable ball. He started to hoist the flag. His daughter asked him what he was doing. The players watching the match were surprised that he was not swinging around much, while Takahara was contemplating that he must be terrified of his super fastball. Kiriyama was pondering that Takahara certainly could throw a good ball for an amateur, but he could handle that. Takahara commented that those two balls were just a warm-up, but from that point on, it was going to be serious. Whether it was baseball or fighting, while throwing the ball, he confidently stated that he won. The manager asked to measure the speed with a speed gun. The guy answered positively. Then, he threw the ball with all his power, and the batsman was not able to hit it. The players watching were surprised by the speed, finding it hard to believe the power with which he threw the ball. Kiriyama pondered that it was a terrible ball, and if the next one got in the strike zone, he would hit it. Meanwhile, Takahara was glad that he had taken 3 pitches and 3 strikes, declaring it was his win. He stated that he told them he was the real dealer and asked not to get upset, as he couldn't help it. No matter what it was, he called himself a genius at it, while Kiriyama called him dumbfounded. Later, he walked away from there. His uncle called out his name, and upon seeing him, he was terrified. His uncle asked him to join him. On the other hand, players were telling the manager that the ball had a speed of 154 kilometers, and the bowler replied that he knew Takahara was special. Kiriyama stated that if he lost, at the spur of the moment, his uncle asked him to join Yakult Ace for 3 years, and he would speak to Sekine for him. If Sekine said that was fine, but Takahara told him that he did not want to play baseball. The scene opens up where the girl was going to school. Her father told her that she should not involve herself with a boring guy. The boy was running in a corridor and the uncle asked him about Takahara, where their future ace was. He replied that Takahara was still sleeping and commented that he was going. Then the uncle went into Takahara's room, which was very much messed up, and Takahara was sleeping there. He woke him up by calling out home run loudly. Takahara woke up and asked what he was doing. The uncle answered to not say anything and asked him for how long he was going to sleep. He stated that Takahara should really try waking up early sometimes and should try jogging because that was the path to being a pro baseball player. He further commented that the important thing was 1% being a genius, and the other 99% was working hard. Takahara went away and commented that he was getting breakfast, then he realized that he was late. Later, the uncle asked him if he took things from the store again, but he did not answer him, took his bike, and stated that he was going. The scene changes, where the boys were sitting on the lane, and Mitsuru asked his friends where Jin was. His friend told him it would be smart if they did not involve themselves with Takahara, otherwise, he would snap. Mitsuru asked him if he was scared of him or something and called him an idiot. He told that it was not going to be like that day, and this time they would snap. A moment later, a group of people, on watching them, a boy called them Sekura Industries. Then the man from the group claimed that they were not the kids from Shirataki, and later told them that was not good, and they should go to school and study properly. The other guy replied that they did not have the mug of being a normal kid. The other stated the one who surrounds himself with stupid weaklings was still an idiot, and he was just bothering people without knowing their place. On hearing this, Mitsuru abused him and asked to wait for them. Then one of the people in that group turned back and asked what was that and hit him, causing him to fall down on the street and come in front of Takahara's bike. To save Mitsuru, Takahara had to change the direction, and because of which his bike slipped and hit the wall while he fell down in the other direction. His bike was all broken. Later, he stood up. The guys watching him commented that he was still standing after that accident, while Takahara shouted it was him. So one from Sakura Industries asked him if he knew Mitsuru. Then Takahara went towards him, held his hair, and told him that if that was not Prince Fatass, he better had a good story for that one, and asked him if he would get compensation for his bike from him for sure. Mitsuru replied that but that time it was those Sakura Industries guys. So Takahara looked towards Sakura Industries guys and stated that this time they were the root of all evil and asked them if who was the head there. The man from the Sakura Industries group put his hand on the shoulder of Takahara and asked him who the hell did he think he was. Then Takahara slapped him, and he directly fell on the ground. Takahara asked for the head and then stated that he did not tell him that the guy who was sleeping was the head. He told them that he could not wait all day for that and asked them not to forget to bring the money there the next morning. If they did not bring it, he would have to head down to their school and collect some interests. The scene changes to the school where the girl was ordering the students to calm down. Then, she saw Takahara and showed some warmth for him. He stated that she was making a scene, and she replied that he came there every day with blood on his body. He answered that he could not help it as it was a car accident. She commented that he should wake up a little earlier and walk to school, further stating that he had to be careful with all those accidents. He pleaded that it was a great idea since they lived together and could walk to school where holding hands was natural. The other students watching that commented if they were dating, and some were shocked. On hearing this, she started crying and said that she could not come to school like that anymore. The other girl commented to keep quiet as she was crying. Takahara claimed that he got that and now he would make her happy. He put his hand on her shoulder and stated that her face matched a smiling face. Then, she punched him on the face and claimed not to get carried away. A moment later, when the class got off, the teacher asked them to stand. All the students stood and greeted him, while, on the other hand, Takahara was sleeping in class. Later, the girl asked her friend to go home, and her friend questioned her if she was not going with her boyfriend. The girl's answer was that it was a joke and who would like to be with him. Her friend answered that if she looked that way, he was pretty cute. When she looked at him, she boiled with anger and stated that looking at his face made her puke. They both went away from there, and the other girl asked her if her family ran a bike store and if she needed to buy something, would she get a discount? She answered that it sounded fine to her, and they would also not charge for the cover when she comes for servicing. When they came out at the gate of the school, they saw there was a crowd of people, and the girl commented on who those guys were. Mitsuru's friends were watching from the window and stated that there was no doubt that these were from Sakura Industries and they had come for payback from that morning. In the spur of the moment, Takahara woke up and stated that he slept well. When he was coming down the stairs, he bumped into Kiriyama, called him an idiot, and asked him where he was going. Then, he held his collar and stated that he was still loitering around him. Takahara asked him what, and asked if he wanted to go for a fight. Kiriyama replied that he told him already he could not fight, but if it was baseball, then he was ready whenever. Takahara started laughing and stated that if he was half asleep or something because last he checked, he beat him in baseball. Kiriyama replied that if he wanted to go on about that and called him a monkey. Then, he hit him and asked who was a crazy monkey, questioning if he could fight. While they were fighting, he heard the conversation of some boys who were talking about Sakura Industries. A moment later, the girl stated who these people were on Earth and claimed that they could not go home with them. The teachers were talking about what they should do and claimed they should call the police. A while after, Takahara went towards them. The head of the group told Igarashi about him. Meanwhile, the friend of Mitsuru stated to his other friend why he was going alone. He replied that he had no clue about that. Then, the girl commented that she had a bad premonition, and her head was hurting. Later, Takahara asked them if they had come there with the money and asked them to lay it to him. The head of that group called him an idiot and told him he could even handle him alone, but he was not prepared that morning. However, Igarashi hit him. Then Igarashi told Takahara that it had been a while. Takahara started contemplating who he was and sat on the ground. Igarashi introduced himself and asked if he had forgotten him. Then, he remembered that they were middle school friends. He surprisingly stood up and told him that he was looking good, petted him on his head, and asked what happened with his hair. Later, Igarashi thanked him. Then, they all went back to Sakura Industries High School. There, the head of Sakura High School slapped Igarashi and stated that he did not care if he was his buddy in middle school. He asked to bring that guy back to him and commented that they would teach him the fear of Sakura Industries. The scene opens up in front of the school, where Igarashi was coming in on his bike and got off his helmet. Then the scene changes inside the school, where the bell rang and lunchtime started. All the students began their chit-chat while some were having lunch. Someone tapped on the shoulder of Rui, and it was none other than Takahara. He asked her if he could borrow some money for a bit of food, stating that he did that until the second hour, and he would be really grateful. He also claimed that he was still growing. After hearing that, she gave him only 500 yen and stated that he could buy whatever meal he wanted to eat. Then he told her that he was not talking about school food but was referring to good food outside of the place. The girl replied that he should not talk like he was living a luxury life. Another girl chided that she could lend him money if he wanted. The girl replied negatively, and then Takahara went away from there. On his way, he found Mitsuru's friends and asked them if they were also eating outside. The guy replied that they were eating in the school. A moment later, Mitsuru slammed the door and asked his friend what that was about while Takahara was pondering what he was going to eat. In the spur of the moment, Igarashi was coming inside the school. On seeing him, Mitsuru asked Takahara if he was not his buddy. Then Igarashi thanked God as he bumped into him there only and asked him to come with him for a second. Later, they went to a restaurant named Phoebe's, where they ate a lot of food slurpily. Then, Igarashi stated that if Takahara joined him as he did in middle school, then even Sakura Industries could not stand against them. If that happened, nobody in that area could beat them. By the expression of Takahara, he asked if he was not interested. Takahara replied the same, that he was not interested at all. Besides that, he questioned him if that was really his treat. Then, he pleaded with him to say it was his loss and stated what he would do if he got a call from Manakaku, as he further stated that he meant he did not mind ignoring that. Later, Takahara replied that it was annoying and stated to get them to come out already. In that very moment, the group of people came there, and one of them stated that it seemed that was not needed, while the receptionist fearfully welcomed them. Then one of them asked Igarashi, whom he had invited out to eat. He replied sorry, while the three boys started a conversation that he was the Sakura Industries Bankaku. The other guy stated that he had a bad atmosphere around him, and there was no way they were going to fight there. Bankaku stated that even though he was from the first year, he could not allow him to act so freely. Takahara replied to keep him quiet if he was going to argue about his little circle and asked him to do that elsewhere. As the guy asked him what was that, the protagonist took the fork and attacked his hand with it so hard that blood came out. After that, the guy apologized if he just wanted to talk. And then another guy ran towards another room and entered the room by breaking its glass. Just after, the guy lifted a chair and announced that was the gong to start the match and hit one of the guys with that chair. Then one of the guys exclaimed that he was good and declared to put him in a bag, as the other guy wondered that he was as fast as ever. Afterwards, one of the guys asked the protagonist what they did at that time, and then he threw the guy over the area where the fight was happening. And he exclaimed that he was seeming bored, so he gave him their portion. As the guy stood up and stated if it came to that, then he guessed that they had to fight, and after that, all the guys who were gathered there started to fight with each other. The scene changes to Class ID, where the teacher was teaching and the girl was shaking while writing. Then her friend commented that she could have told her that she was worried. She answered negatively that she was not worried and contemplated that the reason for her worry was those Sakura Industries students who came there because of that big idiot. A moment later, they got inside the kindergarten where the teacher was teaching the story of Momotaro, and the kids were finding that boring. Another kid asked if that was not Flashman, but suddenly the boys of Sakura Industry came there with fighting, broke the door of the classroom, and did not consider the kindergarten kids. They were still fighting with desks and chairs by throwing them at each other. Their teacher was getting the kids out of the classroom to save them, while some kids were enjoying the fight and felt that it was cool. One of them was going to hit the bench from the back, then Igarashi came and saved him. The entire kindergarten was damaged, and Takahara stated that it was sure that he was flashy. In the spur of the moment, Bankaku, on seeing Takahara, commented that he was getting a little cocky. Takahara answered that he was cocky since he was born, and in that moment, Bankaku hit him and stated that it looked like he was going to show him the difference between playing around and real strength. Then Takahara stood up and claimed that he was so happy as he was getting serious. On seeing them, Igarashi pondered that he made Jin show his real colors. Then in the next moment, he makes a punch while to save himself from Takahara. He makes a defense for himself with a chair, but Takahara punches him on his face, and he directly gets into the wall, and his face was all filled with blood. Then Igarashi commented that his right arm was damn powerful. Later, when they came near the river, Takahara asked Igarashi what he would do then. Igarashi answered him that there was no need to worry about him, and he was going to do what he had wanted to do for a long time. The truth was that there was something that he did not want them to pull him away from, and that was baseball. Furthermore, he told that since he was a kid, he had a dream to play at Kushian, and for that, he needed to gather some good teammates. Takahara answered him that he got what he wanted to talk to him about, and that was about Kushian. He stated that he would definitely do well in baseball. Then Igarashi asked him if he enjoyed fighting. The scene then shifted to school where Takahara was trying to fix the furniture of the school that they had damaged. A moment later, the scene changed to Nakamori Motors where his uncle and his family were having dinner. The uncle asked why Jin did not come down to eat or if he was sick. The girl answered that who knows where he was, while Takahara thought in his mind if he enjoyed fighting, as that bastard Igarashi was telling him that what he was doing was boring. The scene opens up where Takahara was sitting on the bars in the playground, contemplating about what Igarashi has stated if he enjoys fighting. At that moment, Rui came and asked Jin what was the matter. He was amused on seeing her and stated what a surprise. If she was worried about him, then she called him an idiot. Then he told her it was nothing and started to circle with the help of the bar, asking her to go to a hotel. On hearing that, she kicked him on his face and in anger asked him to die, and he fell down. Then he again started to make a circle with his body on the bar and was thinking about Kashian. And suddenly his hand slipped from the bar, and he fell down again. Then the scene changes to Sakura Industries, where Igarashi was contemplating that he seriously wanted to try his hardest and have an aim to play at Kashian. A moment later, they were on the ground where someone claimed that he had to pay the price for fighting and was being suspended from playing. Igarashi answered him that it was the leader's order and asked if he got that. As being suspended from playing, Kuroda and his teammates sat outside of the ground, and he claimed by abusing Igarashi that he was getting a little carried away. Another guy asked him about Jin and who he was. The one guy told that he had heard a rumor that he was the leader of a gang when Igarashi was in middle school. On hearing that, the boy asked him if he was Bosazoku. If yes, then he was pretty young for that and further questioned if they rode around without a license for the whole time. Then one claimed that for him, Igarashi was from a neighboring prefecture. The boy with the mask asked if he had heard of the gang. The guy replied that it was a rumor, but there was a gang called the Silver Wolf, which was composed of 7 middle schoolers. They were known for doing things like destroying a team of people, and they were just 7. And their followers increased as well from 10 to 20 and many more. He further told that in the middle of all that, there was a fearsome leader, and they also said that even then with just the sound of his voice, he could gather 1,000 bikes. After hearing all that, Kuroda claimed that it was just a rumor. There was no way that it was Takahara. The guy replied that it was pathetic. Later, Sakata stood up and started to eat the lemon. On seeing him, the boy asked his mate by abusing him who he was. His mate replied that he was from the same year as them, but he does not come to school. He was not what they had called an uncommitted guy and also stated his strength was on the same level as Takahara. Igarashi was playing baseball. There, he caught the ball, so he stated that he felt great and asked for one more ball. Sakuda was watching all of that, and on seeing him, he threw his lemon and commented that he was sweating. Then the scene changes to Shirataki baseball ground where they were playing a baseball match. Kuriyama was playing well, and his teammates were complimenting him for his pitch. One of them stated that if he kept that up, then his dream of Kashian might come true and commented that the weather of summer was good. A while later, somebody claimed that he was certainly a great pitcher, but if they calculated the team's combined power, then they would not go further than the best of 4. A moment later, the protagonist was passing through the ground, and there he saw Kiriyama and came inside the ground. Kiriyama asked him why he did come there, and he replied he could do that. Then the bowler greeted him and asked him if he was Jin Takahara and if he felt to join the baseball club. After hearing that, Kiriyama stated to stop that, and if he wanted to enter that guy then he would give his resignation on the spot. He further claimed that he was the guy that could do nothing but could kill someone in a game. The protagonist replied, asking what was that and if he could not fight, then what was the point. Then he claimed that he had a target of Kashian, and he did not have time to get involved with losers like the protagonist. He had got 3 years in which he would become the star of Kashian and would be a #1 draft pick. He further claimed that his hopes were gigantic, but once he joined the league, then he would clear all the conditions to join the Cebu Lions. Once he got there, then nobody would stand in his way. While the protagonist slept in the middle of the conversation, he asked him not to sleep when he was talking. Later, the protagonist started to make faces. Then Kiriyama claimed that there was no way that he would let him become his teammate. He replied that he would not even do that if he begged him and called him an idiot. While the manager of the team was pondering what he had in that guy on their team, The protagonist was contemplating while driving his bike that everyone talks about Kashian. What the hell was that? The scene shifted to Sakura Industry baseball ground. Sakura entered the baseball club and tried to punch Igarashi, while Igarashi, in his defense, punched him first, and he hit the almira and shouted in pain. While Igarashi asked him what was the deal, he replied he had hit a good punch, and that made him really happy. Later, he questioned him what he was doing with the lemon or if he was a health nut. He again stood up and punched Igarashi's face and asked if that does not sting him and kicked his belly so that he falls into the almira, and again asked him if that hurt. He stated that it hurt to the point where he could not yell while some boys reached there. Sakura asked them to hold Igarashi there. Then he put the bulb in his mouth and punched his face so that the bulb broke down. The scene opens up in the baseball stadium where the protagonist was glad as he had taken the 3 strikes. The game was over, and Shirataki had won their first championship. Jin and Kiriyama were hugging each other with joy. Then, the bowler stated, "This was an embrace of 2 men, what a powerful scene. And that was the youth, that was high school baseball, and also that was Kashian." A while later, a voice came yelling, "Let him go, Jin," and it was his uncle. He woke up from his dream and kicked his uncle. His uncle called him an idiot and stated that he already had a wife and children, and he was not interested in that sort of things. Later, his uncle gave him a baseball glove. On seeing that, he asked him what was that. His uncle answered that it was for him. The protagonist stated that he did not need something stupid. His uncle then told him that with the help of that, he could aim for Kashian, and it was a single step. The real aim was to become a pro. On hearing that, he contemplated what Kashian was and why the hell he was embracing that loser Kiriyama and claimed that it was a terrible dream. The scene changes to school where those 3 boys were talking to each other. One of them stated that he was pretty glad that they got to go out with Jin. Another claimed that it was pretty good. But Mitsuru stated that the protagonist was still a huge idiot. However, the protagonist heard that and punched him on his head and stated if it was his bad and he was an idiot. Then he asked them where Sakura Industries was. The guy commented that he could not be thinking about them. The protagonist stated his name and told them that he had given up fighting. Later, Mitsuru asked him if why. The protagonist started to think why, and Mitsuru told him if he did not know himself. He beats Mitsuru and told him that he quits. But as he was beating him, Mitsuru asked where he quit as he was still beating him. The scene changes to Sakura Industries where those boys were saying it seemed that Igarashi was done in by Sakata and stated that it looked like he would not be able to do baseball. The other guy stated the next one was Takahara. After that, one of the boys called to Koryuta and told him that he saw Igarashi in the ground playing baseball. Later, Sakata went into the ground and told him that he was looking in great form. But he ignored him and was still playing. The ball hits Sakata. A moment later, Igarashi mumbled something to the pitcher and he agreed with him. Then that pitcher went to Sakata, greeted him, and stated if he was standing here, then he might be hit by a baseball. He should stand outside the ground by the spectator area. On hearing that, he was surprised and commented, "Very good, Igarashi," and went towards him to punch him. Before that, Igarashi put his baseball bat in Sakata's mouth. Other guys were thinking that he was playing with those wounds. He was not a normal guy. The scene changes to a restaurant where Rui and her friend were eating cake, which was good in taste. Suddenly, those 3 boys came there. One of them, on seeing her, commented, "That's not Class D, 2 beauties." Then Rui asked them if they were not with Jin. The guy told them that he went to Sakura Industries and asked her if she was worried about him. The other answered that they should leave that alone. On hearing that Jin went to Sakura Industries, she was boiled with anger. In the spur of the moment, the protagonist was riding his bike and contemplating with what bastard Igarashi told him that he could not enjoy fighting anymore, and that stupid dream was making him crazy. Suddenly, he saw Kiriyama and remembered the moment where he was hugging him, and he was pissed off by that. When he came close to Kiriyama, he kicked him. Then Kiriyama asked what he thought he was doing. He replied that he pissed him off in his dream. He asked him if he was going on about and not getting away with that. Later, the protagonist went away from there and replied to him that he has got a short fuse, and he did not fight anymore. Then Kiriyama asked what was that and stated that no matter how he looked at it, he was the one with the short fuse. On which the protagonist replied he did not have time to play around with him as he was seeing back. His bike slipped down, and he fell into the river. The next scene then shifted to Sakura Industries baseball ground where Sakata was fumed with anger. He went into the ground with a baseball bat and hit Igarashi's head with such speed that it broke the helmet off his head. He again hit on his head, but Igarashi saved himself with the help of another bat. Later, Sakata punched him in the face, held him from his face, threw him, and beat him badly. He asked what Kashin was and stated that he would ensure that he could not play baseball for the rest of his life as he was just going to hit him. Suddenly, the protagonist came and kicked Sakata, claiming that Igarashi was his damn buddy. Other suspended boys, on seeing him, called out his name, while the protagonist asked if he really wanted to play baseball that badly. For that, he shaved his head to show that he stopped fighting and let himself be beaten up that badly. In the spur of the moment, those three boys, Rui and her friend, were going to Sakura, and she was asking him to move his bike faster. The guy asked what he could do about that, while Rui contemplated that there was no way he was going to Sakura Industries uninjured, and that was not going to be good if he caused any more problems than there already were. While the protagonist asked Sakata what to do then, the scene opens in the school of Sakura Industries where the students were running towards some place. Someone exclaimed that there was a fight, and another replied, asking if he was taking them on alone or who that idiot was. The guy answered that he was the one who crushed Kuroda, and after that, the students from Shirataki also reached there. As all the students gathered near the field, Sakata asked the protagonist if he was Jin Takahara. He looked around and asked what the hell was that or if the school was full of guys, to which Sakata replied that he hit him in the back of his head and further commented to not think that it was over. Suddenly, the protagonist listened to something, and as he looked around, he found that Sakata was pulling a sharp wire which went so close to his face, and his ear got cut with it. Afterwards, Sakata smiled, and Takahara replied that he kept telling everyone that he had quit fighting. Then he exclaimed that he heard that he was so strong. Just after, Sakata again threw that wire on his face, and the protagonist wrapped it around his hands. He then asked him what did he plan to do and if he gave someone a huge injury from swinging that thing around. As Takahara pulled that wire with his strength, it led to the slicing of Sakata's hand. The students who were gathering there clarified that as disgusting, and then the protagonist told them that it would be best for them if they were not to come that way. One of the guys then commented that he wasn't sure about how to use that dangerous thing properly. After that, someone said to not think that he was so tough and then exclaimed that they all ganged up and got in his butt his way there. He then asked himself if Kashin was that good of a place. Right after, Kuroda came there and called out his name. He further stated that outsiders shouldn't act so high around there. Takahara then looked at the face of Igarashi and commented that he still continued to take basketball seriously despite all of that. As Kuroda screamed at him that he was talking to him, in the very next second, the protagonist showed him his punch and exclaimed that he would offer him something to settle all of that. He further mentioned that he would let him smash that fist of his so that he wouldn't be able to fight ever again. In exchange, they must let Igarashi continue to play basketball. He further commented that if he meddled with Igarashi any longer, then he would crush that poor school. After listening to this, someone asked if he would crush the school, to which another guy denied and replied that there was no way he could do that. The third guy then asked them about that rumor of him being able to call 1,000 bikes with his voice. And then Takahara asked him if how about that, and he replied to wait, as Sakata then asked him if he was scared. Just after, those two girls from Shirataki came there, and while Sakata was going to attack the protagonist, he exclaimed that he would smash it to pieces. However, Takahara was so quick that he protected himself by stopping that bat from his punch. The scene opens where the protagonist protected himself when Sakata was going to hit him with the baseball bat. As the girl called out his name, Takahara said to Kuroda that at that time it was all settled, and then Kuroda wondered what that guy was all about. For Igarashi's sake, he sacrificed his right hand. Right after, Sakata took the bat again and started attacking him, which made the protagonist fall to the ground. In the next moment, he started kicking him. Kuroda told him to stop as Igarashi got up and pulled Sakata by his collar, making him fall to the ground as well. Sakata asked Igarashi if he felt like dying, and then the girl ran to see the protagonist, calling out his name. Afterwards, Sakata commented that it looked like he wouldn't be using that hand again. Suddenly, he delivered a punch to Igarashi, declaring that he couldn't open his eyes as well. As Igarashi fell to the ground, his shoe got removed from his foot. Sakata took that shoe and started crushing Igarashi's hand with his own foot. In the spur of the moment, the protagonist stood up and commented not to get carried away. The girl told him to stop as he had injuries, and he replied that he was sorry but had to finish it with that guy. After that, Sakata commented that it was amazing, and the protagonist replied that hearing that from him just pissed him off. Before Sakata could punch him, Takahara delivered a punch to his face straight away. The punch was so hard that Sakata broke the metal net immediately. Rui told the protagonist to look at his right hand, and Kuroda wondered that he was such a monster with his right hand. Mitsuru commented that he completely smashed Sakata's skull, and another guy replied that he might not be able to use his right hand ever again. Just after, Takahara said to Kuroda that it was settled at that time. He stated to Igarashi that they wouldn't get in his way anymore, and at that time, he could aim for Kashian. Igarashi replied that he would definitely go there to Kashian. Afterwards, Rui held his hand, and he exclaimed that it hurt. She replied that they were going to a hospital right away. Then, one of the guys asked Kuroda if it was really alright to leave it like that. He then asked him if he had the willpower to clean something up for his friend and wondered in his mind that he had lost to Takahara. The next scene shifted to the hospital, where the doctor was taking out the X-ray of the protagonist's hand. The doctor told Takahara that the bone was completely fine and it would take around 3 days to heal, but he would be fine. Hearing this, Takahara replied that he was lying. He told the doctor that it was broken and he should hurry up and heal it. After that, Rui commented that she was worried about him for nothing. The scene opens at the school of Shirataki where someone asked about Takahara. The teacher replied that she was just wondering what kind of student Jin Takahara was, and he commented that he was a totally energetic and good boy. After a while, the protagonist was coming on his bike and exclaimed that he was not going to be late that day. As some students came in front of his bike, he declared that if they were slugging around, then they would be run over. Suddenly, his bike got disbalanced, and he fell down on the ground. He thought that he had made it that far and he was not going to be late. Afterwards, he started running to his school, and one of the teachers said to another that he was certainly energetic. Then, one of the teachers asked about suspending Takahara, to which another teacher replied for him to stay calm down as the decision had not been made till that time. The teacher declared that they couldn't allow that student in their school as there was the risk of him damaging the name of Shirataki. Another teacher stated that the way he used his energy might be wrong, but he was not a bad boy. After that, he exclaimed that the law might be getting involved soon. The next scene then shifted to the Shirataki baseball grounds where someone exclaimed that Kiriyama left as he caught the ball in his glove. The batsman claimed that it was a nice catch, and the protagonist applauded him for his great performance. Right after, Kiriyama asked him if he was there again, and he replied that he just thought he would come over and tell him something good. He further added that no matter how much he struggled, he wouldn't reach Kashian. Hearing this, Kiriyama got mad and started beating the protagonist. He asked him where the hell he was coming from, saying that and also pissing him off. As Takahara started laughing and commented that he wouldn't beat Sakura Industries. After listening to this, Kiriyama asked him what he was going on about as they had never made it to the tournament. Due to outbursts of violence, they had been banned for a while at that time. Afterwards, another guy told him that the ban was lifted from that May. The protagonist then commented that he saw he hadn't been doing his studying, and the guy replied that they seemed to have some good players in there with some good arms. Just after, Takahara agreed and mentioned that he would understand, not like that idiot there. Kiriyama then commented that he didn't know why he was going on about that and further added that it was just talk coming from him, so nothing to be worried about. As the guys were standing there, one of them asked what was that, and then Mitsuru replied he couldn't care in the least about what happened. While Kiriyama was doing the push-ups, he exclaimed that he had never played a match seriously, and he probably couldn't keep up with his push-ups as his body was going dull out at that rate. After that, the protagonist took off his coat and exclaimed that he would show him how much of an idiot he was. No matter what the challenge, he wouldn't lose to him. Kiriyama replied to see if he could last at least 5 minutes. In the meanwhile, someone called out for the vice principal and asked him about his opinion, to which he replied to try making Takahara do some sports and make a decision after they saw it. Hearing this, the teacher got so amazed, and he commented that if they got him to use his energy into sports, then it would be fine. He further added that getting him into the club activities was a wonderful plan. Another teacher then asked him what he planned to do if Takahara caused a problem and forced them to withdraw from tournaments. Vice principal replied that he would take responsibility for that. The scene then came back to the ground where the protagonist and Kiriyama were doing the push-ups. Kiriyama stated that he was not doing too bad for a delinquent, and Takahara replied that he was not so bad himself. After looking at them, the batsman commented that an hour had passed already, and the pitcher asked him if those two really had spirit. Afterwards, Kiriyama commented that it was getting nowhere and called out Minakami to sit on his back. He then said to Takahara that he couldn't copy that. Hearing this, the protagonist called out Mitsuru to sit on his back. Then he said to Kiriyama that he had got a fatty on him. Kiriyama commented that he didn't care who but he needed 2 more on him. He called Akio and Junichi both to get on him as he then asked himself how long they were going to be doing that pointless shit for. He guessed that he had to settle it with his secret technique. Right after, the protagonist started to make faces in front of him, and Kiriyama wondered why he was making an ugly face at him. Takahara then realized that it wasn't effective at all, as that guy was quite determined. While they were doing their push-ups, one of the guys wondered how somebody could laugh in a situation like that, and the other thought that if he laughed, then he was going to fall off. The situation was getting so tense as both the guys were looking tired, and all the guys who were present in the field started watching them. Someone then exclaimed that it had been 3 hours already, and the other guy replied that Kiriyama was going to wreck his body. After a while, both guys fell down on the ground at the same time. Kiriyama said to the protagonist that he had to give him some credit on that one. Takahara then replied that it was his victory once again, and then they started to fight with each other again. Kiriyama asked him what was that, or if he couldn't be an adult for once, and he replied that he fell before himself. Afterwards, the vice principal with the teacher came there, and he exclaimed that it was a wonderful showdown. He stated to give them a round of applause. He further told them that starting from that day, both of them were teammates. The scene opens in the street where the protagonist was riding his bike, and he wondered why the hell did he have to join the baseball team. As he went into his memories, he asked the teacher what he meant by the teammate, and the vice principal replied that he would be explaining that. The vice principal stated that on that day, there was an emergency staff meeting, and he told the protagonist that the topic was about his shenanigans, further mentioning that he was up to be expelled. After hearing this, Kiriyama started laughing and commented that they finally expelled him. Takahara then landed a punch on his face and told him to shut up. The vice principal commented that there were a lot of rumors about their reckless activities, but since there was no concrete evidence, they couldn't do much. He further mentioned that it was decided that they were to use that energy towards the baseball team, and if they wished to stay in Shirataki, then they had no other choice. Afterwards, the protagonist came back into reality while riding his bike, and suddenly a black cat came in front of his bike. Just after, his bike got unbalanced, and he fell down on the ground. After a while, while taking his bike, he wondered in his mind that he was still trying to break it, but the old man didn't see it in time to fix it. In the spur of the moment, his sight went on to who was carrying the flag in his hand. After that, he asked him what was all that, and he replied that he was sorry for whatever he did. He further stated that he did it and finally joined the baseball team. He told him that he just got a call from the manager earlier, and aiming for the star of Yakult was the first step. The protagonist then told him that he was sorry, but he was not playing baseball, and he replied that he had no choice to join and clarified that day as great. The next scene then shifted to the school where Rui said to Jin that he hadn't gone to practice once and asked him if he had quit, to which he replied that he couldn't quit as long as his name was on the team. Then, they couldn't complain, and he further added that he didn't need to do anything about it. A while later, the vice principal screamed the protagonist's name, and that made him fall down on the ground. He then asked him how did he suddenly get there, and he replied that the next day was their practice match with Sesame High School. Takahara then answered him that it didn't have anything to do with him, and then he sat on his bike, exclaimed that he would see him later, and to make sure that loser Kiriyama worked hard. In the very next moment, his bike got crashed into a car, and then the car caught fire. Afterwards, the students started running to see the car, and one of the students exclaimed that someone's car was on fire. And then, the principal commented that it was his car and he only had half a year's worth of a plan on it. The vice principal declared that was some poison right there. The protagonist was hiding under a tree and wondered if that was the principal's car, and he was going to be expelled. Right after, someone exclaimed that the game started at 1:30 at the Shirataki baseball grounds. While the vice principal was walking near the protagonist, he commented that he didn't see anything. The next scene then shifted to the Shirataki baseball ground where the pitcher threw a curve ball towards the batsman, and the umpire commented that it was a strike, and the batter was out. After that, Igarashi came near the fence where he saw Kiriyama with a guy, and that guy said to Kiriyama that it was a nice pitch, and he was getting better and better. Igarashi wondered that both Daisuke and Kiriyama were quite good pitchers and they were the important factors on that year's team. Afterwards, Rui's friend asked her if Jin was not coming, and then she asked her if it was more peaceful that way or not. Also, Rui's father was waiting near the fence and called the protagonist a bastard, and stated that despite it being his debut, he was still not there. And then, Mitsuru stated to his friends that Jin was not there and told them to get going. Soon after, the protagonist with his bike entered into the field, and his bike was so fast that it hit the wall, and he fell down on the ground. As Takahara extended his thanks for waiting and announced that he had arrived. Hearing this, Igarashi thought in his mind if Jin was playing baseball, and then Kiriyama asked the coach if he was going to put out that loser, to which the protagonist agreed and replied that he was going to pitch after that too. Right after, Kiriyama pulled his collar and said him to stop spouting and called him crap, to which he replied that he was a genius after all. And then Kiriyama further asked him if he was a genius and commented that he would admit it after he saw him hit a home run. He replied that something like that was simple for the fourth batter.